So I'm going to hand over to Katie. Katie is a Met alumni and also an Arts University Bournemouth graduate, but I think it's better for Katie to introduce herself to you. So over to you. I'm going to pop myself on mute.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Katie. At the moment, I'm a freelance 2D generalist, which means I'm essentially a digital 2D artist, but I can do storyboarding, character design, layout design, so sort of general art. So what I do is I get sent briefs from a director or a writer or anyone that's sort of hiring me to do work for them, and we go back and forth with sketches, which I'll show you during the talk, and then eventually produce a finished product, and I get paid to do that. So it's a pretty cool job to have. So yeah, I'm gonna show you my work currently that I'm doing first, and then I'm going to go through all of my work and how I got to where I am now. Cool. Okay. So this is my most recent work that I've done for someone called Jason Harding, who contacted me after I sent him my portfolio originally to do storyboarding, which is on the next slide, but I ended up doing character design as well. So this is our main character for the animation. The final animation is in 3D, so it's been pretty interesting to have my 2D drawings converted into 3D. That was something new for me. I can't show you the 3D models, unfortunately, because it's not really my work and I feel a bit weird, but it will be the animation will be finished and published in the next few weeks. So yeah, if you go on the HSBC website, type in gaming awareness, you might find it. So yeah, it's a information video highlighting the risks of online gaming. So that includes sort of malware, hackers, also gambling with loot boxes and spending too much money online, which is pretty interesting to do because I play a lot of online games and I have spent some money on them, not a huge amount, but it was interesting to learn about other dangers of online gaming that I didn't actually know about. So yeah, this is a couple of pages from the storyboard I did, very simple, because obviously it's going to be turned into 3D, so the storyboards don't need to be like crazy detailed at all. It's better if they're not, because most of the detail can be added more effectively and cheaper later down the pipeline. So yeah, this is just a couple of pages from that. So yeah, and another thing I do at the moment is political illustration. So I work with an online forum that publishes articles for people in politics. So these articles that I get sent, most of the time I spend trying to decipher and decrypt what it all means, because I'm not obviously a politician. So I work with an editor called Matt Ross to again go back and forth with sketches and try and figure out illustrations that represent what Matt wants to get across in his articles, but in the form of drawing. It's quite tricky. It's quite a brain teaser to do, but it's quite fun. And Matt's really nice and relaxed about it. So it's a fun job. It's a fun little job. So now that I've showed you what I'm currently working on, I'm going to talk about how I got there. And at the end, I'll show my student film that I worked on and my website and my portfolio and sort of, how I got to where I am now, essentially. So I did go to college at Basvik and do graphic design, but I don't have any work from it because it's all on paper and I don't remember where it went. I think it's in the attic somewhere. But yeah, so graphic design was sort of the end of graphic design was when I started to get into drawing comics. So I did an adaptation, I think, for my final project of the film called The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and I adapted that into a comic, or a scene from it into a comic. It was pretty fun. But that's where I started drawing comics, and I brought that into my art foundation. So this is some work from the final sorry, final project I did for my art foundation. So they basically um, made us experiment with different mediums and projects and stuff, and then they asked us to sort of specify what we want to do. So I went down the 2D illustration route. So on the right there, the photograph of the sketchbook is something I did in that unit before the final project, and then I took that's sort of where my idea for the final project came, and then I made that into a comic based on a video game called Metal Gear Solid. So again, it was another adaptation. Quite a lot of my work comes from takes a lot of inspiration from the things I like, but not in a way that it's copying. More, I like to put my own twist on sort of, video games, films, shows that I like. I just find it really helpful to learn how to tell stories and design characters and stuff. It's pretty normal to do that, so don't feel afraid to, put your own twist on existing stories. So, say if you really like an anime or a comic, if you can sort of effectively put your own character into that world, it's a really helpful exercise of sort of blending in new characters to existing films or worlds, which is quite a lot of what you're doing in industry. If you go into animation or film, is sort of if you come into a already established project, like like if you were to come into a Batman comic, you'd have to then maybe create a new character that blends into sort of the Batman universe, for example, or be really good at drawing those characters so you can make the style consistent. It's really helpful to do fan art and learn how to draw established characters, really, because you might be working on something one day that means you have to draw that character loads. Hope that makes sense. But yeah, so as well as this, I did this book in my art foundation. I did this whole booklet of Star Wars tarot cards. There are a lot more than these three. These are just my favorites. I think there was about 20 or something. Quite a lot of drawings. So yeah, that's what I mean. They art foundation was really helpful to figure out what I wanted to do, but also what I didn't want to do. So, for example, in the first unit, they made us paint with acrylic, and they made us do sculpture, all these like sort of crazy, very arty stuff like screen printing. And I'm glad I did it because it helped me learn that I didn't really sort of more traditional art techniques didn't really work with me. I'm a lot better at digital and prefer working digitally and sort of it's just a really good course to do, and all the tutors were lovely as well, and I had a good time. So yeah, from my art foundation, I then got into Arts University Bournemouth, doing an animation production degree. So here's some of my favourite work that I did from first year. Quite a lot of first year is taken up by learning the fundamentals of animation. So we animate on paper and use something called a line tester, which if you don't know is basically it's a fancy camera on a stick that you can adjust that way and sort of take pictures of your paper frames and create animations. It's a pain, but it definitely teaches you quite harshly the fundamentals of animation. It's good. So we did a ball bounce and we animated like a sack dropping from the ceiling. We animated a flag waving. really sort of short, simple, not quite so simple animations to do. And then we went into a human walk cycle. It's quite a lot of work, which is why I'm not showing you every single animation, because we'd be here forever, and I want you to get the chance to ask me questions and stuff. But we did a human walk cycle, and then we moved on to a dog walk cycle, which I think we ended up collaborating with the film students, but the third year film students, and we designed these cartoon dogs. So it was live action with animation over the top. I don't think I have it to show it somewhere, but it was a cool project. So we all had to come up with our own designs for the dog for their live action owner. So you can see in the corner there's the live action owner, and there's the dog that I designed for them, and they're meant to sort of match style wise. My design didn't get used, unfortunately, but I still quite like it. And to the right is we do another project where you have to design the room of a character. So it's called Artisan Room, but it doesn't have to be the room of an artist. It can be the room of anyone, really. So it could be, I did the room of my character Ryan, who is like a robotics professor. So I designed all these like makeshift this sort of makeshift lab, because I didn't want it to be too flashy and fancy. Sort of it's very sort of, using cardboard boxes to stand their laptop on, and sort of very messy and disorganized. And you can see in the bottom there's like been an explosion while he's working on the robot. So just little storytelling features like that. I found this unit really fun to learn how to do that. Yeah, it was really fun. I liked it a lot. So in my second year is when I really sort of dug my nails into character design. So this is a character called Laura, which I've had for since my first year, but I properly started developing her through my second year. And yeah, so she's like a nurse. Like, she started as a wartime nurse, which featured in my pitch that I did for uni, which I don't have on this because unfortunately I couldn't find in much of the work. But she started off as this sort of World War II nurse who lost her husband in the war. But then over time, her story sort of changed and developed, and now she's more of a sort of crazy mad Dr. Frankenstein-esque sort of woman. I quite like how she's developed over the years. Sort of pulling away from the sort of historic side of it has been quite fun, because if you do something historic, you need to get your research really, really on point, and it's quite a lot of work. And I enjoyed doing that, but it got a bit tiring, and I just wanted to do my own thing and sort of do like a dark comedy that was a bit strange and wacky, I suppose, instead of just like periodic drama where everything has to be very serious and you can't really make a joke out of World War II at all. So that's why I wanted to obviously pull away from that, because I wanted to add some comedic elements to this character. This is a project I did as part of uni. So Laura was something I was doing outside, apart from it sort of fed into my pitch, but it was mainly outside of my uni work. It was just something I was doing in my own time. And this is a character design, again, talking about putting your own characters in existing films or TV shows. So this is a character that I designed for, if say if there was a sequel or a prequel to the film Django Unchained by Quentin Tarantino. That's it. So this, I don't, if any of you've seen Django Unchained, it's very violent but very good film. I like it a lot. So this is the wife of one of the main characters called King Schultz. Because there's something that feeds into Kill Bill 2 where you can see the gravestone of his wife. So I quite like all that stuff. So I took that as my brief, like just that gravestone, and obviously then went on to research the fashion around the time that Django Unchained is set. So the other main character, she's the wife of, is German, so I went into looking at like traditional German, they're called dirndls, but like Oktoberfest dresses, I guess. But yeah, and then some sketches from the actual film as well. And then from that, I did a couple of variants and asked my peers at uni which ones sort of fit her character description, which would be she's sort of wealthy, but she's not ridiculously rich. So I ended up going with number 3, which sort of mixes, it shows that she does have a bit of money, but she's not like upper class living in a mansion per se. So yeah, that was my sort of process for that character design. And then from there this is sort of my first real attempt at storyboarding. This is when I discovered that I really, really like doing it. So on the left of my thumbnail sketches, they're very neat for thumbnail sketches. My thumbnail sketches now are a mess. But yeah, so I took this character design and thought up a backstory for her. So again, sort of going back to the actual film that it's from, the character of King Schultz has this like theme song essentially, and the lyrics talk about his brother getting killed and then him going on sort of a revenge journey, and I think that's where he meets Django, because he becomes a bounty hunter before the film. So yeah, I storyboarded that sort of event and then polished and refined some of the images, which you can see on the right there. So this was all for the same unit. So we had a unit where we could just specialize in something and spend time learning about how to do the things we actually want to do, if that makes sense. While on the other hand, we were doing a group project with like, it was like Cinderella noir kind of thing. I didn't like it too much, but I think that's just because I got a bit of an annoying group to try and put it nicely, but nicely-ish. But yeah, the actual art I produced was pretty good. But yeah, again, I couldn't find any of that stuff, unfortunately. So yeah, that's okay. So then we move on to third year, where I really, really start loving storyboarding and storytelling. So this is a project that I think I called Miss Frankenstein for a bit. So this is Laura again. So this is where she ended up. So this is sort of my dark comedy, wacky sort of. I guess you could call it sci-fi, but it's not really spaceships and stuff. But it's like, yeah, I don't know what you'd call it. But so yes, on the right there, I've written my own script and then annotated it. So script annotation is something you do before you start storyboarding. So I actually did script annotation for the freelance work, those storyboards that I showed at the beginning. So doing this part in uni before I got that, sort of before I had to do it in real life, I'm so glad I did it, because I knew exactly what I was doing when I got the script. And yeah, I think if I didn't do this, I'd be very confused about where to start. But yeah, so then on the left is sort of just the main beats of this scene. So yeah, on the right is just the first page of the script, but on the left is the whole mapping of how I want the scene to go. So, I mean, you can read it, but basically they're having dinner, and then Ludwig, the male character, sort of thinks that it's going to turn into something else and goes in for a kiss, but she just stands up and walks off to the bathroom. And so he gets bored and starts investigating her house, and then goes downstairs and finds this sort of lab, makeshift lab, or like hospital bed with this, well, Frankenstein basically. So she's crazy, and she has a Frankenstein in her basement, so he runs off, and then she the sort of comedy beat would come in. It doesn't show it in the illustrations, but she would come in with a knife, and the shot comp would be very ominous, but then she'd just be asking him if he wants some dessert or, more wine or something. So yeah, I'm still working on this now and figuring out how I want it to go. But yeah, it's a fun little project. And these are so this is, to the left is some more updated drawings of Laura and the sort of the style I wanted for this. And then to the right there is Ludwig. So he was originally going to work at a morgue, but I think that changed to a bartender. But again, it's completely in development, and everything it changes quite a lot. But yeah, these are some little character designs for that. This is work that I did for uni, so an actual unit called a portfolio development. So it's a kind of like the other one that I did for Django Unchained, but you get longer to do it, and you're expected to specialize sort of a lot more thoroughly and do a lot more research for it. So yeah, I specialized in character design a little bit, but mainly storyboarding for this one. For this Frankenstein I did hand it was a part of that. So originally my storyboards were going to be about something I'd created and written, but then I realized that was way too much work to do in, I don't know, the time I had, which wasn't very long. I couldn't remember how long it was. So I decided to yet again do an adaptation because I just like them. They're fun. And they work, and I learn a lot from them. So I went to Stranger Things, and my favorite character being Jim Hopper, I naturally wanted to do a storyboard with him. So these are just so the left is some sketches sort of transferring a live action character who, if you draw perfectly, is very complex, obviously, and I'm very simplifying it down because I know that this is for storyboarding. So you can't have your characters be too detailed, otherwise you'll be there forever. So yeah, to the right, the bottom right is simplifying it even more. Yeah, and sort of top right is more detailed drawings of Hopper that I think I did in my own time, just because I like him. I think he's cool. And these are the final storyboards of what I did for that Stranger Things project. So you can see the style is really, really simple. Hopper doesn't have a nose, and he's just sort of two little dots and a mustache and some eyebrows. Very easy to draw, very quickly, in loads of different poses. So he wakes up sort of grumpy, which is very in character if you've seen Stranger Things. Comes out and sees Elle making the kettle whistle to wake him up with her powers. Checks the time, sees how much he sort of smoked and drinks last night, regrets it and feels bad, and then goes to the kitchen to make his coffee. Oh yeah, that was it. So this brief, I went to my tutor and said, what can I do for a storyboarding brief for my portfolio development? And he said, do something really simple, but really spend time developing it. So this brief was just storyboard somebody making a cup of coffee. And I did, but I did it obviously in the style of Stranger Things. So I spent time annotating and researching sort of the shot compositions that they use in the show. I have a page showing how I did this on my website, which I'll show in a bit. But yeah, it was really, really fun. So it was just him making a cup of coffee with some sort of character interaction. So, he starts smoking and Elle looks even more cross, and he sort of gives her a look of, I'm sorry, but she's not having any of it. So he continues making his coffee and then walks over, and then it just ends on a shot of them, like a sort of wide shot of both of them. And yeah, that's how I ended it. I did that scene. And finally, this is some work I did for my student film. So my student film was directed by this lovely guy called Miles. He's a brilliant director. I think he's going to do very, very well after uni. And so, yeah, it's I'll show it to you in a moment, but it's basically, it's about London foxes and following their journey. So the whole thing is in this sort of style, like it's painted and all the animation is like painted. It was a really, really interesting film to work on. I really liked working on it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll take a few questions before we watch the film, if you want to do that. Or would you rather watch the film first and I'll show you my website and stuff?
Does anyone have any questions? I've got one, I think, or a couple really. I mean, what do you think in terms of, if you placed yourself in the situation where the students are now, so coming towards the end of a level 3
Okay.
qualification, what would be, you know, what would you wish you'd known at that point that would have helped you navigate your way through university, art foundation, and into industry? Have you got any?
Yeah. So I wish that, I think especially during my art foundation, I was very apprehensive to. I'm not sure. I sort of just remember being quite apprehensive of showing people my work at that point because I was very insecure about it. And if people in this sort of Google Meets draw, they must know. It's very close to your heart when you know, and then you show somebody and you really don't want them to go, what is that? Because that's sort of you then sort of go, oh well, if they don't know what it is immediately, then it's a bad drawing. But just show people your work, and sort of part of them going, what is that? And then you get to explain it. That's part of being an artist, I guess. I think that helps. But hope that makes sense. So I wish somebody had just told me to not be so insecure, which they did, but I wish I'd listened.
Have a thick skin because it's
Yes.
have a thick
Yeah.
skin because it's a cutthroat
Yeah.
cutthroat world, and
Exactly.
yeah,
You definitely need to sort of take criticism as, what's the phrase, like water off a duck's back, I think that's the phrase, but just sort of not, you really can't take it to heart, because when people are critiquing your work, they're not critiquing you as a person, they are critiquing your work. It's not personal. But to be honest, I only sort of stopped feeling personal about it at halfway through my second year. So it takes a while, but you will get there, and just sort of try to, the more you show people your work, the more you get used to it, definitely.
So we've got some questions in the chat. I don't know if you can see them, but I can read them out. There's one from Natasha. For your particular university course, were you able to use other media, or was it just drawing?
Okay, so yeah, you do get to use other media, but not until the second year. So if by other media, so we did, Arts University Bournemouth offers 2D animation, which is what it's primarily focused on. And then you can also learn how to do 3D modeling and animation as well in something called Maya. And you can do stop-mo as well. So Richard Haynes is the head of stop-mo, for example, and he worked at like Aardman. He worked on that Pirates film. I think he worked on Shaun the Sheep for a while. So they're really like, they know their stuff, and you're in good hands if you want to do sort of stop motion or 3D. But you do need drawing. You do need to know how to draw before you go into that course, because if you don't, it will sort of hold you back a bit. You have time to learn how to draw, so don't worry if by that point you're not a hugely confident in your drawing skill, but it is good. Like, I knew I did life drawing and stuff before I went to AUB, and I found that really helpful to do, because you do a lot of life drawing in that course, like a lot. You do it
Yeah, I've heard that before, and I guess that was, I mean, people who are thinking about going into these sorts of courses at university level, you need to be able to draw, to be able to sort of translate your ideas onto paper. So you can have all these ideas, but if you don't have the drawing skills, so it might be worth considering doing an art foundation diploma in between to be able to practice those drawing skills, or maybe get involved in some of the life drawing classes in and around Brighton. I'll pop some links in the chat function. We've got another question from Loki. What games or cartoons inspired you?
Oh, goody. I like this question. A lot. So I can sort of turn here, but I have these like my precious art books here. So I have, I don't know if you can see, a Metal Gear Solid one for when I was doing that art foundation project. I've got one from BioShock Infinite, Wolfenstein, and The Last of Us, and I've got a couple of Marvel ones as well. So those, but also right now I'm pretty into Apex Legends. So I've been posting a lot of fan art to do with Apex Legends on Twitter, and it's getting quite a lot of good feedback, which is great. So yeah, but also I was really into Tarantino, as you saw. I really, really like Breaking Bad. What else? A lot. Films. Everything. I don't know. So I get really into things. So I watched Breaking Bad with my friend Khaled during my third year of uni, and then I ended up writing my dissertation on it. So I get really, really, really into things, and they really inspire loads of what I do, as obviously you can see from all the Stranger Things and Metal Gear Solid stuff. But yeah, I hope. Thanks for saying I have a good taste in games. I hope so.
So, Kaylin, there were so I think Marvel pretty much released an art book for all of their films.
Oh yeah, there's absolutely loads of them. I've got the Civil War and Infinity War one, but I sort of stopped after that because they were really expensive and there's loads.
They are, some of them are ridiculously expensive,
Mhm.
but you can get them secondhand. And Dave's Comics, does that do?
Yeah, Dave's Comics do them, but they're about how much was?
Probably a Christmas present.
Yeah, so Dave's Comics do them, and they're about £35 to £50.
Yeah.
Usually more like 40.
And
Um,
how useful are they? Are they?
they're really useful. I mean, they're just absolutely full of work that you can take inspiration from. I'll try and show a bit of the Last of Us one, but they're just full of loads of different like characters, loads of scenes. I don't know if you can see very well, but and all these like visualizations of the game. So you can learn, like, even if you can see this one, you could learn a lot about composition and sort of composing a scene even in a film. So you've got the character as a silhouette here. They're sort of, this is blocked off, so you look automatically to the giraffe. So it's a line. I don't know if you can see that, but that's what art books are really good for, just studying how people in industry do it, basically.
Are there any? I mean, I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but are there any internet resources that people can access freely without?
Yeah, no, there's loads. So you can, if you're sneaky, you can get PDFs of these art books online. I'm sure you can find them. They're quite easy to find. Or people post on YouTube. They post people like going through the art books and showing off the whole thing. So if you can't afford these, you'll be fine. You can go on YouTube, and I'm sure there's somebody taking you through the book. Or to be honest, most of the work in these books these days are on Pinterest and Google Images. I just quite like the physical copy. They're quite nice.
Pinterest, a good shout. Maybe perhaps if you wouldn't mind, we can follow up this session with some links to things, so I can email out. I've got a list of all the students that have attended, so we can follow up with some links that you can check out if you want to. There's some more questions coming through. So Kaylin's asked, were there any big struggles as an artist you had on a journey to where you are now? Have you had any instances where you've had trouble putting an idea on paper?
Oh God, all the constantly. Constantly. That's like my biggest issue. Yeah. So
How do you overcome that?
I don't know yet. No, I do know. So I'll start with struggling to put ideas onto paper. So that's where thumbnails come in. So if you just, or notes, you don't even have to draw anything. So I have these. If you just get a big wad of post-it notes, especially for storyboarding, you can basically draw a couple of, it limits, ooh, don't drop it, it limits you to this size. So then you don't spend years trying to draw this one detailed piece, and sort of I remember getting really frustrated during, like, I don't know, when I was drawing for myself in college and art foundation, that I had this really clear image in my head, but I just didn't have the skill to draw it just yet. So you could either thumbnail and make notes if you're struggling to put like a story down onto paper, or I'd say spend quite a lot of time life drawing, studying sort of, if you want to learn how to draw people, then you should sort of study not human anatomy in a medical way, but try and do a lot of life drawing and break down the shapes of that everything is in the body. You don't need to learn that this is the, I don't even know the names, but you don't need to know every single muscle and every single bone or anything, but definitely spend time practicing and doing life drawing. And it doesn't, again, you don't even need to spend a huge amount of time doing it. If you just do sort of, I do 10 sort of quick sketches of poses sometimes when I'm feeling a bit rusty, and then that's all I need, and then I can just try and I can move on to something else that isn't spending ages drawing poses. I hope that helped.
Yeah, that is really good. I mean, I do think the life drawing, sort of understanding how the different limbs kind of connect to one another and different angles is really, really important. There is another question. So Frank is asking, did you feel like taking an animation course limited you just to animation and made it harder to pursue things like character design?
No. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. Or are the skills applicable to most things?
No. Well, no, but I think that's because of the course I did at AUB. So, like, an animation course, I had an interview at Manchester School of Art, and they did, I think it was animation and illustration. So obviously I was like, oh, that's me, right? And then you go there and it's focused purely on teaching you how to animate and draw, which isn't, I didn't necessarily know, I didn't know what I wanted to be in the art industry quite yet. So I thought if I learn how to animate, it'd be a good skill to have. But then I realized I didn't want to do that, because animation, being an animator, is really hard. Well, for me anyway. I know loads of really talented animators and they're really good at it and they have a lot of fun. But for me personally, I don't have fun with doing animation. But my point is, the Arts University Bournemouth animation production course, so the really important word there is like production, teaches you all of the pipeline, all of the sort of timeline of making an animated film. So you learn how to animate in the first year, and then you learn how to do a bit of character design and sort of specialism in 2D, 2D pre-production, which is what I'm into, in the second year. And then in the third year, you get to do a bit of pre-production, and then but you have to do either animation or layout. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to remember everything. So it doesn't limit you at all. So the course I did wasn't focused on making a bunch of animators. It was focused on allowing people to learn the whole pipeline of an animated film, or even a live action film, to be honest. And then deciding where they want to be and that sort of timeline. So I'm right at the beginning. I did character design and storyboarding. I hope that makes sense.
So that's, I mean, I guess that's why you on your website call yourself a 2D generalist.
Yeah.
So it encompasses all of the storyboarding, character design, development, and you're not limiting yourself. But
Exactly.
I know that a lot of university courses that are kind of, animation production, students will fall into different areas of animation production and then collaborate.
Yeah.
So the idea is that, we're about to see your short film that was a collaborative process. So and you can tell us a bit more about the different roles within that and the role that you had. Does anyone, and I guess it's sort of about going through that process and being open-minded about what you're being exposed to. So rather than latching onto an idea that you want to be this, which may very well be fine, and you end up being that in your future career, don't shut off to all the other things that you're going to learn about and be exposed to of your university degree program, because I guess that's what going to university is supposed to be about, exposing you to all of these other things that you've not known about before. One last quick question from Jacobina, and we will then watch your short film and end the session. So, what advice would you give to students about preparing for university interviews, such as portfolio? How did you feel about being part of a group when being part of a collaborative work? So that's two separate questions there. One's about preparing for university, portfolio and interview.
So I'd say, this is going to sound really cheesy, you just have to be yourself, like unapologetically be yourself, because an interview goes both ways. You're also figuring out if you want to go to this uni, and they're figuring out if they want you at the uni. So that the interview I went to at Manchester School of Art, I didn't want to be there, and I knew that. So I didn't flop my interview, but I didn't try as hard as I did at the AUB one. I don't do that. But that's not advice I'm giving. But my point is, you should want to be there as much as they want you there. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So that's for the interview part. Just be yourself, answer the questions as honestly as you can. Don't try and...
Sorry to interrupt, Katie, but I think that's really important for people to understand, that it's a transaction all arranged. This interview process is really for you to check out whether you feel that you're going to be a good fit there, your work is going to fit with the other students that are there. So somewhere like Manchester School of Art is very conceptual and out there and quite arty. AUB will have some courses like that, but the animation production is quite practical and applied. So it's really about you finding out from them what they can offer you. Don't forget, it's an expensive business. So it's, you need to make sure it's going to be the right option for you.
Yeah, exactly. As for what I put in my portfolio, I can only speak from AUB, obviously, but what AUB look for, sort of proof that you're doing life drawing, and trying to learn the fundamentals of drawing. You should have a bit of that in there. You should have whatever you want your specialism to be. So I wanted to be a character designer, so I had character design in my portfolio, and I talked a bit about that in my interview as well. And sort of overall, they're going to ask you about what you put into your portfolio. So if you're looking at a piece and wondering whether you put it into portfolio, if you can't talk about it a bit, or you don't have anything to say about it, then I wouldn't put it in. Unless it's life drawing. Obviously, you can't really talk about life drawing that much because it is what it is. But yeah, put work you're proud of in there, obviously, and put work you can talk about in there. Don't just chuck whatever you can in the portfolio, because it will come across in the interview, because you won't be able to explain what it is as broad as effectively as something you're really proud of. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and each, don't forget that each university, when you once you've applied through UCAS and you're invited to submit work either digitally or as part of an interview, you will, you know, they will, each university will offer, will give you individual guidance. So they will give you different, each university might have a slightly different way, a slightly different format. So that's when you start, you're following the guidance from each individual university and researching what they're expecting in a successful candidate. We have got your tutors are very experienced in supporting you with all of this. And if you went on to an art foundation, that really, you just spend a year building a portfolio, really, don't you? So
Yeah, basically.
and then the final question, and then we'll watch the short film and then call it a day. This is a good question, I think, because you know, it's something that I've struggled with, working as part of a group. How did you feel about working as part of a group when being part of collaborative work?
It's okay. I had mixed feelings, but I was part of lots of different groups. My first bit of advice is don't work with your friends. Don't. It's not. It's it's good for a bit, and it's good if you know you can work with them. But if you're just mates and you be like, "Oh, I really like your art," and "Oh, I really like your art too," I wouldn't. Working with somebody like that is a bigger undertaking than you might think. So I was really good mates with the director on the first student film I worked on called Wolfish, which didn't end up getting made. And my friend Ozzy is a ridiculously talented animator. He's so good. He's like Disney DreamWorks level going into uni. He was really, really good. But he wasn't a very good director because he's wanted to just do nothing but animate and didn't want to do the directing side of it, but his film got picked. So that it didn't ruin the friendship or anything dramatic like that, but it was definitely, it felt quite uncomfortable when I had to then sort of put my own degree first and leave the project because it was just a bit of a mess and I didn't want to hinder my own experience and grade because this film, like this group, wasn't working for me basically. But it just, yeah, like I say, I'm not saying it's going to ruin your friendship, but it's going to make it feel a lot more uncomfortable than if it's somebody that you don't really know and you only have sort of gotten to know through working with them. So the director Miles on the Suburb film, which I'll show you in a minute, I barely knew him beforehand, and he was, like I say, he was a great director, and now we're friends from that instead of sort of friends before, then worked together, then gotten annoyed at each other because maybe perhaps it didn't work. But it's not as black and white, of course. Like I say, if you know you can work with them and you've worked with them before and it's been fine, go for it. But if you haven't worked with your friends before, I wouldn't recommend it. It can go a bit sour. Yeah, and just I think a big part of working in a group, especially in an art course where everybody has their own ideas and some people can be very strong personalities, you really have to like stand your ground. Which is something I didn't do until third year, and I sort of regret in a way because I had the Cinderella project, which I think I mentioned before, and somebody sort of self-assigned themselves the role of director without discussing anything with anyone, and I should have said something because that's really annoying. But I didn't, and then the sort of experience of working in the group was very I felt very ignored. Like there was just a bit, it's just there's just sometimes a bit of drama, like somebody sort of traced my artwork in their sketchbook and then submitted it, sort of things like that that just can happen, but you either have to let it go, like that the characters, like the tracing my work and put it in the sketch thing, I just let go, that's fine, or stand your ground if somebody really is taking over.
I mean, I guess it's
Tricky.
it's part of a process of negotiation, and
Hmm.
that is quite challenging. Actually, we're running out of time, but so
Okay.
I think just to say before we watch this short animation, please, I posted some links. There's the Big Egg Films Q&A at 4:30 today. Katie's doing a virtual character design and development workshop tomorrow online from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. I popped the link for that in chat. Also, if you want to get involved in some of the things at the Phoenix Centre, there's life drawing classes. There's also a really cool thing called Draw Brighton, where they do pop-up life drawing, which is might be a little bit more accessible in terms of cost, I would have thought. But Katie, we've got, just got under 5 minutes, so are we okay to move to the video?
Yeah, I've just put the link to my website in the chat because I don't think we'll have time to go through it, so you can look at it at your own leisure.
Thank you.
So yep, I will try and figure out Google Meets. Okay. So I will just play and let me know if there's any technical difficulties. Cool. So that was Suburb. Yeah. I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. So thank you so much. I hope you found that interesting and useful. Like I say, we'll follow it up with an email with a few different links if you want to go and check them out. And you've got Katie's website there. She's posted a link at 11:55 in chat. So if you're interested in connecting with Katie, finding out a little bit more about what she does as she kind of navigates her way through industry, then please keep in touch. So that's it, guys. Thank you. We're at 12 o'clock. So thanks for attending.
Yeah. So my Instagram and Twitter's in the corner there if you want to check it out, but it's up to you.
Oh, that's nice. Nice feedback from Callum. Thank you. The workshop, Kaylin, there's a workshop tomorrow with Katie. It's online. Oh goodness, I put quite a lot in the chat, haven't I? So I'm just going to repost the information for you, which is there. You need to be quick to click that link because once I shut this meeting down, it'll disappear. Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Katie. That was excellent. Really enjoyed it. And we'll all keep in touch.